In the cultural tradition that I come from, it is really important for us to honor our ancestors and the people that came before us. Yes, the ancestors of our lineage, but also the ancestors of our morals, values, the ancestors that align with the actions that we take on a daily basis that lead us ever closer to the world we've been dreaming of. It is in that vein that I am embarking on a new series on my astrology channel called Cosmic QT Ancestors. And today we'll be talking about Ancestor Marsha P. Johnson. Oh, hey, Cosmic QTs. It is your friendo, the lady Ms. Vagina Jenkins. And yeah, this is a new series on my channel, partially due to a suggestion from one of the subscribers to this channel. Shout out to Young Thickums for the suggestion. They said that they wanted to see more analysis on this channel, and I absolutely agree. And so, yeah. When I started this channel back in the day, and by back in the day I mean literally 1 year ago, my one of my ideas for content was to do chart analysis of Black, queer, and trans ancestors, particularly activist and radical ancestors. And for some reason, not pursuing the idea, mainly because of autistic black and white thinking, I could not conceive of a way to get consent for such an endeavor from people who had passed on. And it is because of Young Thickham's suggestion that I thought to revisit the idea. And then all of a sudden, it just seemed so obvious to me. Yeah, I am a hoodoo centered astrologer. I have access to ancestors at any given time that I would like to talk to them. And so, yeah, because of that background and that cultural experience, I was able to do some root work and check in with the spirit of Marsha P. Johnson in a way that felt good and in alignment with how I do things. And I do believe that she would give consent to be honored and venerated in this way. So, yeah, this is a new series, a new thing to embark on. And I'm very excited, and I'm really grateful that Marsha P. Johnson is the first cosmic QT ancestor we get to explore. So let's move over to my computer and take a look at her chart. So before we get into the astrology of it all, first I want to say hi and share with you this temporary altar that I built to Marsha P. Johnson. And then I want to share a bio of her life that I found. So let's get into that. So this bio comes from Cal Gooden for the National Parks Conservation Association, because apparently there's a Marsha P. Johnson National Park in New York. Marsha P. Johnson grew up in Elizabeth, New Jersey with her mother. She said that the town had zero tolerance for LGBTQ plus people, and as a woman assigned male at birth, she left as soon as she could. She graduated high school at 17, then fled to New York City, where she could finally start dressing how she wanted. She worked both as a waitress and a sex worker. Choosing a name is a rite of passage for many queer and trans people, and she tried on a few before settling on Marsha P. Johnson. Johnson was inspired by a Howard Johnson restaurant that she liked, and the P stood for Pay It No Mind, which is how she responded when questioned about her gender. Johnson is often erroneously credited with throwing the first brick at Stonewall. While she didn't start the riot, she fought alongside her fellow rioters in fierce solidarity. Johnson said she wasn't afraid of being arrested because she'd spent the last 10 years going to jail simply for wearing makeup on 42nd Street. She had nothing to lose. While she may not have started the riots, she was a major player in the LGBTQ plus rights movement in the community during the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Johnson would go on to create a trans rights group with Sylvia Rivera called the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, STAR. They also maintained the Star House, a place of refuge for LGBTQ plus homeless youth. Johnson was known for her immense generosity. She'd spend her meager earnings on meals for others and couldn't walk downtown without multiple people calling her name and wishing her well. She was joyous and creative and enjoyed performing. She made intricate outfits out of garbage, thrifted pieces, fresh flowers, and her own black trans creativity. She modeled for Andy Warhol and wrote poetry. She was a Catholic with a strong sense of faith. Her work continues today through the Marsha P. Johnson Institute, which fights for the rights of Black trans people. And the last thing that I want to add before we get into the astrology chart is the fact that in order to have a natal chart created for a person, you have to know their exact birthplace, birth time, and birth date. And we do not have a birth time for Marsha P. Johnson. So this is an estimated chart that we are going to look at. If you are a person who is living, I hope you are if you're watching this, but also, hey, ancestors. Um, if you are a person who does not know your birth time, you can book an astrologer to do a rectification, which is basically a sort of reverse engineering of a birth chart. It's a service that I offer on my website, vaginajenkins.com. It's absolutely a labor of love. And yeah, if you don't know your birth time, that does not mean that you cannot access astrology. There are so many ways that we can support you. So definitely reach out to an astrologer. So, having said that, we don't have a birth time, but we know the birth date and place. And so we can look at the chart or create a chart in a couple of different ways. This is the first way, just a list of planetary placements without actually knowing like what house these planetary placements are in. So I've got some notes and let's look at these things. So first and foremost, Sun in Virgo because her birthday is August 24th. So at the beginning of Virgo season. And when I think about a Sun and Virgo sort of person, I think about a person who aspires to make the world, the physical plane, better for everyone around them or the people that they love, rather. So that's one thing that comes to mind. And then I see that they have, or that she has a moon in Pisces. And with the moon in Pisces, well, a couple of things come to mind. First and foremost, that's almost an opposition, which tells me that she was born during the full moon time. If you haven't gotten a chance to check out my most recent video, I'll link it up here somewhere. But this is a separating aspect. So we just had, or they had just had the full moon, and then Marsha P. Johnson was born. So she was born directly after the event of the full moon. And like, what does that mean in terms of what it means to have your emotional self opposite about the self that you aspire to be, the sun. And so I think about when I think about a full moon, I very much think of it as being a time of harvest, a time of like releasing. And so the time after the full moon, I wonder if that's the experience or a lifetime spent being more reflective, um, particularly about reflective of like harvests of experiences of releasing things. So yeah, that's something that comes to mind. And then also just generally speaking, the moon in Pisces is a place that wants to connect intimately, intuitively with other people as a means of finding emotional stability. So what was that life like? Also this Mercury in Leo moment here. When I think of Mercury, I think of how we think, how we speak and communicate. Yes, our writing style, that kind of thing, but also the ideas that we find interesting. And I wonder about the experience of Mercury in Leo being something about speaking with a sort of royal authority, being the kind of person that people respect, want to listen to. Also, because Leo, I associated so much with creativity and joy. What was their mental landscape like in terms of creative practices, which as evidenced by so much of their performance work and costume work. Also, what was it like in general to be this Mercury and Leo person and an activist, and to have this sort of dignity about you when you speak. Yeah. Moving on to the Venus and Cancer of it all. When I think about Venus and Cancer, uh, I can't read what my notes said, but something about colic and protection. That's not true. Care and protection. Child, my handwriting is atrocious and it gets worse as I get older. But yeah, what is it like to have your love language be rooted in caring for others and protecting others? Also, yes, Venus as a love language, but also Venus as a way that we attract blessings to us. So, what is it like to actually put forth the effort to care for people, to protect them, to nurture them, and to receive blessings for it? Then there's also the Mars and Gemini of it all. When I think about Mars and Gemini, I think about the kind of person that might pop off on you. Like maybe there's not necessarily a filter in terms of like their experience of anger. They're going to talk about it. Is immediately comes to mind is a Mars and Gemini sort of trait. And I have read that she did have a little bit of a temper, and would cuss out people when it was warranted. And you know what? I'm going to call that righteous rage and respecting yourself and speaking on it, which is, an amazing skill to have and to cultivate. So, yes, to Mars and Gemini realness. And then there's also Jupiter in Virgo, same sign as her sun sign. When I think about Jupiter in Virgo, I think about the idea of expanding your mind, your mindset, your worldview, but in a very practical way. Jupiter is not, it's in detriment in Virgo. It would much more prefer to be at home in Pisces, or Sagittarius. And planets in detriment, it sounds horrific, detriment, right? But it just means that you have to find a more unique way to accomplish whatever the planet is trying to do, and Jupiter wants us to broaden our mind, to have a broader worldview. And I'm wondering about the experience of Jupiter in Virgo being like, okay, if I can touch it, I can change my mind about it. So, yeah, an example that comes to mind because I was watching TikTok just before this is how sometimes kids in high school don't know what career that they would like to choose as they're going on and graduating high school, because they haven't been exposed to a list of careers. And so it's this experience of, oh, I have to touch that. I have to see a person doing that. I need to see a listing in a book that describes this career in order for me to wrap my mind about it. That's the kind of Jupiter and Virgo experience I'm curious about her experiencing. Um, and then there's the Saturn and Cancer placement. When I think about Saturn and Cancer, I absolutely think about the hard work and responsibility for caring for other people. And so when I've read a lot of articles about Marsha P. Johnson and her like giving her last, earnings to someone else so they could buy a meal, or sharing resources in all kinds of different ways, um, my first, judgmental instinct about that was kind of, oh, are they being self effacing? But also, what if a different way to look at it is to think of this as like, oh, this is something I actually feel responsible to and responsible for. And it actually feels like part of my life's work that I must do these things. Not that I'm putting myself at a detriment or being self effacing, but that this is my work. So I love that, and that's beautiful. And how lovely is it that their work coincides with the way that they love and their love language, Venus in Cancer, Saturn in Cancer. Uranus in Gemini, when I think about Uranus, I think about how we make things weird and how we make things queer and how important that is. And so, yeah, with Uranus in Gemini, I wonder about mm, queer speech patterns, which I believe she definitely had. I also think about queer ways of talking to people, queer conversations. Yeah, a lot of sort of queer communication strategies, um, and speaking to people with love, kindness, and respect, regardless of their station in life and their role in the hierarchy of capitalism, feels very queer to me. Where are we at? So we got also then Neptune in Libra. Let me check my notes here. Um, so when I think about Neptune, I think about dreaming and what they call being delusional, and how that sense of hope can sort of propel you forward into something. And so what kind of dreaming was she doing about relating to other people? That's what I think about when I think about Libra, and how it wants to connect to other people, particularly around like ideas and interesting conversations, because it is an air sign. And so, what is it like to dream and share your ideas in community with other folks as a way to connect more deeply and foster community and intimacy in that way? Pluto in Leo, and this is the outer planets are where I should have said this earlier, but the outer planets are where I really want to know what houses these show up in, because Pluto in Leo describes 20 years of births, right? All these people are born during this like 20-year long period. And to find the individuality of it, I really want to know what house this is all playing out in. But Pluto, generally speaking, is about some deep soul level transformation that we are experiencing over the course of our lifetime. And so with a Pluto in Leo, um, oh, I wonder about how becoming a self-actualized person, finding your joy, finding your sense of creativity, how that kind of transformation ends up serving the world, the community that you're in. And so, yes, to like that general idea. And then, yeah, I'd be real curious about what house this is all playing out in. And then we've got their North Node in Cancer. So, again, this is the area of their life that they will grow over time, being nurturing and caring, and providing that kind of emotional protection for folks, and including, herself. Um, but then it also means that the opposite is South Node in Capricorn. And usually that's the kind of energy that we're more comfortable with. And when I think about a South Node in Capricorn, I think very much about I provide material resources and money, and that's how I show care, and how we're supposed to, yes, we come into the world in that energy, but what we're supposed to do is grow into our North Node energy. And so I wonder if that felt like a source of tension for her, that oh gosh, if had the material resources I would share with you, but also what is it just to share protection, nurturing, care with other people. And lastly, the Chiron in Libra. So it's interesting to be dreaming, Neptune in Libra, dreaming of connections with other people, but also to have this source of wounding around connections to other people. Chiron usually talks about a wound that we're healing over the course of our lifetime. And so, yeah, what is it like to have felt wounded in the social sphere, but also dream of healing, or healing that wound via our dreaming of the connections that we would like to have? Um, so that's some really good stuff. And then I also have a circle chart that we can look at too. So definitely keep in mind that we don't know for sure that Marsha P. Johnson is in Aries rising. We're just creating this circle chart by using an Aries rising as a point of reference. So these planetary placements we know are actually having these aspects, but we don't know what house they are in. I just want to underline that one more time. Major aspects that jump out of the chart to me are this trine between the moon and Venus, and the way that Venus and Saturn are connecting their energy. And also this square between Uranus and Mars and the moon in Pisces. So let me check in with my notes and we'll get into it. So let's look at Venus and Saturn blending their energies first and foremost. So this is a conjunction, two planets sitting next to each other, blending their energies. So Saturn says, "Hey, this is the thing that I want you to be responsible for. This is your work. This is your task for this lifetime. The caring for, the protecting, the nurturing folks." And then Venus says, "Hey, this is also your love language." So, how beautiful is it that they are sitting next to each other, blending their energies? My sense of responsibility and my love language are wrapped up in caring, and nurturing folks, and also the kind of like thing that they would like to receive, right, is care and nurturing as well. The thing that I wonder about in terms of difficulties, though, is Saturn and Venus being conjunct. Saturn sometimes it puts limits on things when it's in interaction with other planets. And so I wonder if her love life was something that grew over time. Sometimes it has a time limit, like, oh, this will get better over time. Or sometimes it's straight up like, oh, you might not be able to access much of this. We're going to have a real clear boundary on this. And so, yeah, I wonder if love was something that she found later in life. Um, or if there were experiences of feeling like she did not get the love that she wanted. So that's something that comes to mind because of that Saturn and Venus conjunction. But let's go with the responsibility and love language angle, being rooted in care, and how that's supported by in a trine relationship with Moon in Pisces. Again, Moon is the emotional landscape, and Pisces wants us to connect on an intuitive, spiritual level with the people that we, feel emotionally safe with. And being able to feel emotionally safe when we have these kind of intuitive, I can say anything. And I actually don't even have to say anything because you can kind of read my mind, like those kinds of connections with people. And so, how beautiful is it to have that in a trining relationship with the Saturn Venus being conjunct? Um, what feels a little hard though is seeing that the moon is square this Uranus Mars situation. So Uranus and Mars are conjunct. They're blending their energy too. And so when I think about Mars, I think about the things that we are passionate and dedicated and really excited about pursuing. And then again, your Uranus, some form of queerness or rebellion or just feeling weird and different in the world. And then it being in Gemini, I'm wondering about sort of, like I said, unique or interesting speech patterns or unique or interesting thought patterns, like that were counterculture. And so, yeah, those guys combining their energy, but they are in a square, a tension relationship with the moon in Pisces. So, something about trying to connect to people in this sort of intuitive, deeply spiritual way might have been at odds with her queer thought patterns. Um, and I wonder if that is the vibe of like, what is it called? That phrase, being before your time. So having these really deeply revolutionary queer ass ideas and wanting to connect to people on an intimate level, on an emotional level, but they not ready for you. Or, I wonder, I'd be curious about what y'all think. What other experiences might that describe? So yeah, those are some the main aspects that come out, but also I just love how connected this chart is. I feel like every placement is in relationship with other placements in the chart except for the north node. And I'm really curious. I saw that and I was like, what do we make of that? An unaspected north node. Does it mean that it's easier to reach your north node potential, this thing that you're supposed to grow into? Or does it feel as if this is not actually part of your day-to-day life? I'm really curious. Yeah, comment below if you have any thoughts about what an unaspected planet, generally speaking, might mean, or particular to having an unaspected north node. Oh, I was looking at my notes and I see that there was something that I wanted to mention about just not looking at Uranus and Mars together, but Uranus square moon like separately on as its own aspect. And I very much think about when I think about that aspect, the tension between Uranus and the moon, I wonder about mood changes that seem to come out of the blue. Um, that's another sort of thing about Uranus. It's like queer as shit. It's really weird kind of energy, but also it can be, this kind of experience of like the aha moment, or it can be like, yo, that was off. That was out of left field. Where did that even come from? And with it being in square to the moon, again, I wonder about difficulty in the emotional sphere, uh, due to like moods that may have come out of the blue, particularly because of the Mars conjunction, if they were sort of anger sort of issues that might have come seem to have come out of nowhere. And also, it doesn't seem like it was necessarily about some sort of like physical violence ensuing. It seems very much like, yeah, I'm about to pop off. I'm feeling some kind of way all of a sudden, and I need to talk about it. And I imagine that it probably goes pretty quickly because of the Gemini nature of it all. Gemini, I often think about as fleeting emotion or fleeting mental states. But yeah, that's something to think about as well. And I also wonder, because of the Uranus moon connection, if there was some form of neurodivergence at play. Also, because I see that Uranus is connected to Mercury and the Mercury is retrograde. Um, a lot of times, Mercury retrograde in the natal chart can be a much more internally focused thinker. What is that? Oh, being self-reflective, I think is a way that I've heard that described. But yeah, with this Uranus Mars connection to Mercury, which is about the ways in which we mentally process the world, I wonder if there was a queerness of thought, a neurodivergence. And then, yeah, looking at the Mercury placement being so close to the sun, it's not directly touching the sun and getting burnt up, in a sun Kazemi kind of relationship. No, it's just, it's 6 degrees away. Is it six? Yeah, 6 degrees away. And so they are in conversation with each other, kind of blending their energy, but not in a way that is making the mental state frazzled, but in a way that is supporting the mental state. So what is it like to like have your mental state be in pure alignment with the self that you want to become in some kind of way? It's interesting though, because they're different signs. And so what is it like to have these ideas that are rooted in creativity, um, the speech pattern that commands attention, and have it being blending energy with having the idea of aspiring to a self that is about improving the world around us. It's a really interesting aspect as well. And then getting to these last few planetary placements, Jupiter, Chiron, and Neptune. It's interesting to look at the square between Neptune and Chiron. Um, so we talked about this energy, this Uranus and Mars together. Maybe, anger that comes out of left field kind of feelings, but also maybe just a passion for like talking about and thinking about things through a queer lens. In tension with Chiron and Neptune combining their energies, and also Jupiter is there. So I'm just going to start with Chiron. When I think about Chiron, again, this is a place where we have felt wounded, definitely in our childhood. Sometimes it's a wound that keeps getting opened back up, because of our interactions with the world. But it's also a place in which we get to experience this amazing healing over time as well. So when I think about Chiron and Libra, particularly, and again, I want to know what house, but when I think about Chiron and Libra, I think about feeling wounded somehow by our relationships and connecting to other people, with Neptune being involved and Neptune being so much about dreams, but also illusions. I wonder about experiences of feeling wounded and confused by connecting to people, like people aren't what they seem kind of vibes. And then with Jupiter there, I wonder about the number of experiences that may have happened in this particular way. Like perhaps it was because Jupiter expands things wherever it touches. And so whenever, it's combining with these other energies, I wonder if that means expanding the number of experiences in this particular way, or if it is expanding my mind, like maybe something about my mind and the way that I think about this. I had to open up and expand my mind in terms of how I feel wounded in my connections and confused in my connections with other people. I had to change my mind about it. But yeah, it's in this square relationship to the Uranus Mars conjunction. And so I'm wondering about, popping off on people because you feel as if they're touching or picking at the wound that you may have had around feeling confused by or disillusioned by people. And then that same aspect, the Neptune, Chiron, Jupiter conjunction, blending of energies, is connected to Pluto in Leo. And so I wonder so much about, yes, having these experiences of having feeling wounded and healing via some sort of Pluto and Leo transformation. So maybe sinking into my creativity helped me deeply transform this womb, or somehow sinking into my sense of like, I am a queen. I deserve respect. I deserve to be treated as if I am a queen walking these New York streets. If somehow sinking into that kind of feeling helped, and that self actualization helped transform this kind of relationship. But yeah, this is a sextile, so it's a positive relationship between these difficult kinds of placements. And so yeah, I'm curious about that as well. I love how I say I'm curious about, because I am curious about, and I'm not going to say, oh, this is exactly what happened, because I don't know, but I do get to be curious. So that's the chart reading. Yeah, those are some of the things that I notice about Marsha P. Johnson's natal astrology chart, but I'm also curious if there are some things that you notice or want to chime in on. Absolutely. I want to be in conversation with you. Definitely comment below. And if you found this video helpful and you enjoyed it, please consider supporting this channel and my Black queer autistic livelihood in general. One of the ways that you can support this channel is by becoming a member of this channel. Membership of this channel starts at $3.99 a month, and you get really cool perks like loyalty badges and custom emojis. You get to see content before it's published to the general public. And it's a really great way to support this channel. If that sort of monthly commitment seems like a bit much, please consider just doing a tip via the thanks button below. If neither of those options are available to you, I absolutely understand. Please consider just supporting this channel with your comments, with your likes, and by sharing this content to your networks. All right, cosmic cuties, thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end, and just thank you for having my back. And of course, as always, thank you for making time for queer astrology. Love y'all so much. Bye.